Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is William Albino. William is the general manager at 00 Restaurant, which is part of the Castellucci Hospitality Group, a family-owned collection of restaurants in the Southeast. Their mission is passionately pursuing the perfect dining experience, one guest at a time. They focus on sincere hospitality, attention to detail, and great food and service. Offering diverse culinary experiences, mainly in Italian and Basque cuisines, the restaurants provide high-quality ingredients and wonderful dining atmospheres. Now, under William's leadership, 00 has thrived in providing exceptional dining experiences. Castellucci Hospitality Group, CHG, has been recognized by the James Beard Foundation and featured in publications like Southern Living and the New York Times for their outstanding restaurants. Williams has over 5 years of experience in educational and nonprofit settings. Before joining Castellucci Hospitality Group, he worked in management and community engagement, advocating for client success in hospitality and vocational training. He holds a master's degree in special education from Florida State University and a certification in project management from Emory University. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our proprietary programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. All right, back to our guest today, William Albino, General Manager of 00. William, I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Very thankful for this opportunity to kind of talk about a lot of things with you about my journey. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. Every story, inspiring story, has a beginning. But yours didn't start out in hospitality. You came up from a much different field. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I started off kind of different than you would think. I started off in education, and that kind of started with my love for helping individuals with the special needs community. I kind of started off as an educator where I focused on life skills and job training skills for adults with developmental disabilities. And this passion kind of started when I started working at the YMCA for about, let's say, 3 to 4 years when I was in high school, transitioned to my freshman year of college. I started working with kids with special needs and kind of seeing that I was really enjoying working with them and really catering to their needs. And after having a conversation with my parents, they actually encouraged me to kind of just go for my dream of working with children with special needs. And I kind of went to college to do that. I had a great passion for it. To this day, I still have a great passion for it. You know, there was nothing I couldn't do in that because I just loved it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And so how long, so you got a master's from Florida State.
Mm.
And how long did you actually operate as a special ed teacher before you decided on a transition?
I was doing special ed teaching for about 2 to 3 years. I
Okay.
worked for a nonprofit local to the area that was really focused on doing job training skills for people who had just either graduated high school or were still in high school looking for what the next step was. So it was more kind of like a day program, essentially. It never worked for an actual school. It was more of a nonprofit that specialized in uh, day program kind of related skills.
Okay. And so after 2 or 3 years, and I'm glad that you clarified that because my wife, she's a speech therapist in a local school district.
Mm.
She works with a lot of special needs kids. So when I hear special education, I always think the younger bracket that she works with, which is like, preschool, kindergarten. And of course,
Yeah.
that depending on what people's needs are, that those needs go in, to much later into adulthood. So that's the population that you were serving, sort of making this transition
Yeah.
from high school into,
Hmm.
maybe the working world. So after, operating as a special ed teacher for 2 or 3 years, what changed? Why was there a transition?
I feel like I kind of got to the point where I needed something new. I realized that there was not much career advancement opportunities for me to kind of excel in what I was doing. There was only so far that you can go. So, for example, with this nonprofit I was working for, it was just like you were the instructor, or you go up to kind of like the management or executive director role. Those roles were already filled, and I didn't think those roles were going to be open anytime soon because I mean the executive director, she owned the company, and that she was great. She was great at that, and it was kind of like her thing. And then there was a program manager who's been there for years, and she's not going to leave either. So I kind of felt I just needed something new. And I'm huge about career advancement in any field that I do. So even in education, if there was not an opportunity for me to grow, I kind of just felt stuck, and I hate the feeling of feeling stuck. So I kind of was looking at other fields out there that could kind of make me grow as both a professional, grow as a person. So that's kind of what led me to hospitality, but it was also kind of an accident as well. And it was an accident, but it was also something that I just had to do in a quick moment because I needed something.
And so how did you decide on working in hospitality and restaurants? You
So it
said
was
it's kind of an
actually,
accident.
this happened all during COVID.
Mm.
So when the pandemic hit, I was looking for other jobs because I had just left my previous company, and I was kind of looking at other opportunities to grow. And this was all right when the pandemic was hitting. This was like beginning 2020, and in a way, I was desperate for a job. And so I had a friend who was said, "Hey, I work at a restaurant. I work here as a server assistant. They're looking to hire another server assistant. Are you willing to do this?" And I said yes because I needed a job because this was also the time when a lot of companies were not hiring. There was like the big hiring freeze again, pandemic. So I needed something, and so I got hired as a server assistant the week before the world shut down, essentially.
Oh,
When,
wow. Okay. So right at the
yeah,
beginning of March,
yep,
March
right at
2020.
the beginning of March, I got hired, and then I think a few days after I got hired, but everything shut down. So we had to, all the restaurants were shut down, everything had to freeze.
And so what happened then? You're without a job again.
Well, no, so they kept me on, and so
Oh, they did.
even though the restaurants were closed, like for in-house guests, the restaurants were still operating. They were still
Yeah.
doing all the to-go stuff. There were still things to be done, and so they asked all the employees who were working at the time who wanted to work, who wanted to come in and help with all the to-go stuff and everything. And I volunteered myself because I'm the type of person that I cannot stop working. I have to be doing something at all times. So I volunteered myself. There was very strict COVID protocols. We had to go and wear masks. We had to take a COVID test every single day before we went into work. We had to wear gloves. There was very strict protocols for us to follow in order for us to stay open. And so I was doing that. I was the person that was boxing up all the to-go food. I was the one that was helping prepping all the food, essentially. I was doing a variety of different roles at that time when the restaurants were completely shut down.
So it's interesting to me that, and I understand now what you mean when you say that you fell into it kind of accidentally. Like you were just looking for something. You needed a job. You needed to be busy and productive. You needed a paycheck. So, okay, the
Yeah.
restaurant opportunity presented itself, and boom, the world shuts down because of COVID. And so now, not only are you learning a new job, but you and everybody around you are learning how to operate in this new COVID world with all these different
Yeah.
restrictions and guidelines. And so, that the stress of starting a new job on top of doing it, at the very start of the pandemic, um, at what point during this process were you like, I really love what I'm doing here? This is something I think I could see myself staying and building a career in.
It took me a while to figure that out, because immediately when I started in the restaurant during COVID, it was more so I was just I needed a job. I needed to be working, and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. What career I wanted to go. Um, and I was still trying to figure that out. And so as I was figuring that out, I was like, you know what, I need to keep working. I need to really just keep myself busy. Um, but then there was a moment in the restaurants where I actually really started to enjoy it just because of the people that I was working with. So about, I think it was around May or June of 2020. I can't remember exactly. When the restaurants opened back up again, uh, when they lifted up all the COVID restrictions, we were able to allow people to come back in at a very limited capacity. So, still very strict COVID protocols. Table spacing. You can only allow like certain amount of people in the dining room. And at that time, I was still technically a server assistant. So I was really more so helping the kitchen with, running food out of the kitchen, or helping servers bust their tables, water their tables, stuff like kind of things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I kind of enjoyed the interacting with people, both from a staff like a staff perspective and from like guest perspective. And so I just enjoyed talking to people. And then I kind of realized at this moment, it's like, okay, maybe I can really see myself exploring a career in hospitality in some way or form. Now, I didn't know what that looked like at the time, but I was like, let me stick through this. So I did that for a little bit. I was a server assistant for about maybe, I want to say yeah, 6 months. And then I kind of went up to my manager team. Was like, I want to become a server. And so they trained me as a server, and I serving is where I really enjoyed interacting with people. That was the one thing about education that I enjoyed was that, interacting with people, because I'm the type of person that has to really be talking to people, engaging. I'm all about building relationships. And so as a server, I love that. I was building a relationship with guests. I had my regulars that would come in, they're like say, hey, can we sit with William? That made me feel good. And that made me realize, like, okay, maybe there's something in this. Still at the time, I didn't know what that was. I don't know if I was like, maybe serving is a career. For serving is a career for a lot of people, and people really thrive in that. So like maybe this is kind of where I wanted to lead. So I was still trying to figure out what hospitality was doing for me.
Okay. And this first job that you had in a restaurant, was it with Double Zero or one of the CHG restaurants, or did that come about later?
It was with CHG. It was at Cooks and Soldiers.
Okay.
That's where I started. My
Okay.
first restaurant job ever. Had no, not even like in high school or anything have I worked in restaurants. I've always worked in nonprofit settings. I worked at like the YMCA, like I mentioned. I used to work for a museum. I worked for a library. All of these are like settings where I'm not dealing with food. So I have no experience with like serving or like alcohol or beverage knowledge. None of that. I basically had to start from scratch.
Yeah. Okay. So when did the opportunity come about for you to take some kind of a management position?
So as I was serving, I was kind of looking at other kind of career options I was doing, and so I stumbled upon a project management course through Emory. So I was like, let me take this out because I was talking to kind of like a career kind of coach in a way to kind of see what my journey was going to be, and we kind of stumbled upon like a project management kind of role. And I was like, okay, let me look at this. So I started exploring project management. So I did, I think it was like a 6-month course where I did online training for project management. I got my certification. So around this time, I was still working at the restaurant as a server, and I was talking to one of the general manager at the time, saying I was doing like project management. I was trying to see what my career would look like. She was the one that told me that in hospitality they look for project managers. They look for people to help open restaurants. The repairs and maintenance of buildings. And I never thought about it like that. I always thought like project management was you either go in the tech industry or construction. I didn't never thought about doing it in restaurants. And so I was very intrigued by that. I was like, well, if I'm enjoying working in hospitality right now because I like interacting with people, maybe there's a career path for me with project management. So she was the one that told me like you should really talk to, you know, the kind of the corporate team and see like what that could look for you. She told me like they'll probably want you to start off as like a dining room manager and then work your way up to project management. And I was like, let's try it. I'm enjoying serving. I'm enjoying talking to people. Let's give it a shot. I'm willing to have the conversation,
Yeah.
essentially.
It's so interesting to me, William, that you started this project management course thinking that this is going to open up some doors for you outside of the restaurant industry, right?
Yeah,
And then this sort of, I don't know, side conversation that happens. It's like, oh no, we look for that kind of skill and that kind of experience here in the restaurant business.
exactly.
And so how it just kind of lined up like that seems sort of serendipitous.
In a way, it kind of seemed like fate in a way because I was already thinking about how I was enjoying hospitality, and then this opportunity comes up. I was like, maybe this is something I can consider. So it just felt like in the moment I had to give it a shot, even if it wasn't for me. I want to at least still have the conversation of saying I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. So, okay, March of 2020, you get your first job in any kind of a restaurant setting.
Mhm.
When did you actually take on the general manager role at Double Zero?
So that was actually I became the general manager in August of 2024. So I actually became an actual manager for the company in March of 2022. That's when
And
I started managing.
that was the dining room manager position. That was the first
That was the
manager.
dining room
So,
manager at Cooks and Soldiers, yes.
and then what were the other sort of stepping stones before you got to general manager at Double Zero in August of 24?
I was the dining room manager at Cooks and Soldiers, and then I got promoted to the assistant general manager at Cooks and Soldiers.
And so then your first time going into the Double Zero restaurant was as the GM.
Correct, yes.
Okay. What was the biggest challenge that you remember going through in transitioning not only
Mhm.
roles but to a completely different restaurant?
There's there's two answers I have to have that question. The first answer, I think the biggest transition from going to a manager is definitely going from a line level employee to a manager. That is definitely a challenge because you have to get out of the mindset of like, okay, I am no longer a server anymore. I'm a manager. I have to go in with a different mindset. You know, there were times where I had to make decisions where I was like, okay, I don't 100%, agree with it, or I don't 100%, think the staff is going to agree with it. But as a manager, you have to be able to kind of adapt. And so that was definitely a challenge of getting out of that mindset. And then when you transition from, for example, when I transitioned from Cooks and Soldiers to Double Zero, I think the biggest challenge that I had was it's like two different settings, two different cultures, two different kind of cuisines. There's two different styles. And so it's like you've got to kind of adjust your thinking from the style of Cooks and Soldiers to the style of Double Zero. So that was definitely the challenge for me.
Yeah. As you look back now and what you kind of learned going through each of those transitions, somebody else that's listening that may, have similar aspirations, what would be a
Mhm.
piece of advice that you could give to them?
I would definitely, the piece of advice I would give is to really, it's find a mentor essentially. I think that was the one thing that I enjoyed having was like I had people to kind of mentor me into a management kind of role. There was a lot of people who guided me. There was a lot of people who supported me, either if it is either previous manager or previous managers or people from my corporate team. They really invested in me. So I really think finding that mentor, someone that you could trust and rely on to help you, and that you can fall back upon. Someone's like, okay, this is hard. Can you give me some advice? Really find someone that you can trust, essentially.
Mm. Uh, who were your mentors along the way? Who do you want to give a shout out to?
So there were a couple people. I would really want to thank the manager that kind of guided me into this manager. Her name was Joja. She was a general manager over at Cooks and Soldiers. She was really kind of helpful in my development into coming into this role. Really, the Castellucci's as a whole have really been super helpful. Super helpful. They've really invested their time in me, and that means a lot. Um, so I really want to kind of just give a shout out to them.
Great. Okay, so now explain to us, for those who have never been, the Double Zero brand and the customer dining experience there.
hmm So Double Zero is I like to describe it as like a modern Italian um, pizza restaurant. So we specialize in our pizzas. We have our traditional pizza ovens that come right out of Naples, Italy. So traditional Neapolitan pizzas. We use double zero flour. So essentially, with that, you get more kind of your traditional Italian dough. I think the one thing that sets us apart with a lot of other restaurants that I've been to in Atlanta is, you use scissors to cut your pizza. Essentially, we hand scissors to the guests because it keeps the integrity of that dough. And I think one of the greatest things I've learned so far about the process of making the dough at Double Zero is they have been using this, what's called like a wild yeast starter, uh, that they use to make the dough. So basically, it's each day when they make it, the leftover dough that they use from the previous night is used the next day to make to make the dough, and then they just feed it every day with like flour and water. And this yeast starter or this dough has been around for over 100 years, and
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like
And so you
it's
guys
a
just keep sort of not recycling it, but rekindling it at the end of every day. You feed this wild yeast strain, and it
yep,
fuels the rising of the bread for the next day.
exactly, yeah. And so I think it's just a cool process. I never thought about when how pizza is made until I started working at Double Zero, and now it's a cool process. To see it go into these ovens to get nice traditional pizza. It's pretty cool.
What other kind of food do we find on the menu there?
You would definitely find just pasta dishes. You'll have kind of like your traditional bolognese, or you'll have uh, risotto of some sort. You definitely your more traditional Italian dishes like chicken parmesan or an eggplant parmesan. But there's also dishes on there that are more, kind of like the chef's interpretation. You'll have kind of like a squid ink pasta. Something that you don't see a lot, or you'll have your like a whole, well, not really a whole fish, but you'll have like your salmon. You'll have like your steak. I like that there's variety on the menu.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website here, and how would you describe the interior? It's very cool. There's like a modern feel to it, but
hmm
to me the colors seem very warm and inviting.
Yeah, it's very warm and inviting environment. I think the restaurant was designed to be more of a neighborhood kind of spot,
Hmm.
and
I
so
could
when you
see that.
come in, that's what it feels like. It feels like a neighborhood kind of restaurant. Um, so Double Zero is kind of in the suburbs of Atlanta. There's a lot of housing and neighborhoods in the area, but it's also next to Emory University, which is a local university here in Atlanta. So the clientele over there is very diverse. You get your college students who come in, you get your families who bring in their children. You also get your business dinners because we're located near Emory, so you have a lot of professors who come in to have like a cocktail or a drink right after work. So the hospital is there as well. So we do get a lot of doctors and nurses who come in after shift and just kind of want to relax. So it's definitely a neighborhood spot. We cater to the families. We do have a foosball table in the area, so there's always kids, or even sometimes you'll see like professors or doctors and nurses playing foosball. Um, there's always something there for families to do.
Yeah, again, looking at your website here, you mentioned the cocktails that, they look beautiful, and it looks like you guys are using fresh or like recently dried herbs, like real fruit.
Yes.
These look pretty tasty. And I'm also noticing, and maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, William, but it's wood fired. The pizzas are wood fired.
Yes, it's a wood
Yeah,
fired pizza oven. Yes.
yeah. And the advantage of that is what?
I think you just get more, you know, the kind of like the taste of the oven. You
Mm.
really taste the smokiness, you really taste the grillness, you really get that dough where it needs to be compared to if you use like a conventional oven, you don't get the feeling. So when you get it from a true pizza oven, you really feel that pizza.
So Double Zero is one of the restaurants in the CHG, the Castellucci Hospitality Group family. What do
Yes.
you feel kind of sets CHG apart?
I think what sets CHE apart is their investment in the staff and investment in their team. I have worked with this company for about 5 years in many different roles, starting as a server assistant to server, now to manager. And I think if there's one thing that I've noticed is they really invest in their team and making sure that they have the correct training, making sure that the staff is cared for. They really think about what the staff needs and kind of plays on that.
Say more about that, because a lot of the business owners that I talk to and business leaders, they say it's still a pretty tight labor market in a lot of places, and so
Mm.
finding and retaining good folks is often a challenge. What is it that you guys are doing there at CHG? First of all, to kind of find those good folks in the first place, and then you talked about they're really in tune with giving their employees what they need. Maybe you can say a little bit more about that.
I really honestly think it starts kind of with the hiring process. One thing that I've been doing lately with the hiring is seeing who fits our mission. And you said it in my introduction, passionately pursuing the perfect dining experience, one guest at a time. And so, in doing so, if you follow that mission in your interview process, you're going to find people. And so, anytime I do an interview, I kind of make sure to address that. It's like we have this mission statement that we follow, and we also have our values that we follow as well. A couple is, um, investing in relationships, really showing grit, checking your ego, just to name a few. And if you do that in the hiring process, talk about that, the people that will come in will really, you know, show their passion. It's all about finding people who are passionate about really providing a great dining experience. And then from there, really investing in that person, listening to their needs, seeing what they're good at, playing on their strengths, seeing what they're not good at, and seeing how can we improve on that. I always say, restaurants are nothing without the team. If we don't have servers, if you don't have bartenders, or if you don't have cooks or service assistants, you don't have a restaurant. You need to have people driving that. So really investing in them, making sure that they're taken care of. You don't have to, the guests are taken care of.
William, is there a specific innovation or maybe a new approach that you spearheaded that has significantly improved service or made a tangible difference in how guests interact with the restaurant?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, I'm curious if maybe there's a specific innovation or a new approach that you kind of spearheaded there that improved service or made a tangible, notable difference in
Mhm.
how guests interact with the restaurant.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a new approach. I mean, it's an approach that I kind of learned in teaching, my time in educating. It's what I call. It's like you model the behavior. So it's like what I called it is the I do, we do, and then you do. So basically,
Mm.
it's a kind of three-step process. So the I do is I model what needs to be done. So, for example, if I'm showing someone how to open a bottle of wine, I make sure I model the behavior for them, or not. Well, I say behavior, but or model the skill for them. And then the we do is we do it together. That can be either doing it at a table. You know, well, you shadow me, and then you finish it off. Or if we're just still in training, we do it together. We'll work on it. And then the you do is you do by yourself. Let's see what you learned and take it upon yourself.
And so
And
this was
then,
a sort of a model or a process that you've kind of learned from your education background.
yes, that was the one thing that kind of stuck with me in my education background is that three steps: the I do, we do, you do. And I try to implement that as much as possible in hospitality. There are times where it is kind of impossible because of what the saying it is, but there are times where it is possible, especially when you're, doing trainings. When I teach someone wine every day, I when I when I try to teach people wine, I give them the information and then I have them give them information back to me, either like in a mock server setting or, just randomly like, hey, what did we just talk about? So I think that's a model that I've been using, or a technique that I've been trying to do in the restaurants.
I'm curious if you found any other ways to sort of parlay your skills and your learnings from your time in education into
Hmm.
what you do now in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, I mean, there's the biggest thing that I've seen as both in education as hospitality is training. Um, there's nothing, if you don't train, you got nothing. And so if I in my previous job when I was teaching people how to find jobs, I had to do a lot of training. I had to train them how to develop a resume. I had to train them how to conduct themselves in interviews. Um, to this day, I feel like I'm still doing that stuff, in the restaurants. I'm still training people on both restaurant skills, but also on life skills. Because where I'm currently working at Double Zero, my staff right now is mostly, young adults who are still trying to figure out kind of what they want to do in life. Most of them are still in college, trying to figure out what their next steps is. And in a way, I feel like I'm trying to help them train to become what's going to happen to them, like outside of the restaurants, because I know that's not going to be their full time gig. I got to train them for life outside the restaurants. And how can I develop them into leaders in the future or whatever they decide to do?
Yeah, just kind of giving them better life skills, just sort of training them to become better human beings. Uh,
Exactly.
so, William, you took the general manager position in August 2024. We're recording this interview in January of 2025. So, still relatively new on the job. I'm going to leap forward. I don't know how many years because you've still got things that I'm sure that you want to do there, that you want to learn, that you want to develop your own skills. But as you look down the road, what is a possible next step for you? Because you've said a lot about how you always want to grow, you don't
Hmm.
want to remain static. What could
Yeah.
a future step look like?
I definitely want to stick in hospitality. I'm feeling that. I do want to venture into the realm of helping to open restaurants, whatever that may look like. That's definitely something that I am still interested in. There's always opportunity there, because I feel like when you help open new restaurants, you're starting fresh, and you can really mold something into what you want it to be. So again, it goes back to the training essentially. And so if I help open a new restaurant, I feel like I could train the staff. It's like a blank slate and kind of train them to where I think they should be.
So, William, part of CHG's philosophy involves community involvement, philanthropic efforts. Can you
Mm.
give some specific examples of those?
Yeah, so CHG recently, one of the most things they've done is partnered up with the Giving Kitchen, which is a local organization that supports hospitality workers. So we've been we did, I can't remember when it was, but we did a, um, a day where we donated, each restaurant donated 3% of their sales to the Giving Kitchen. Um, and the Giving Kitchen was one of the organizations that helped during COVID for hospitality workers that were struggling. So that was definitely one that they kind of took investment in. And then every month they have like these wellness activities where they go out in the community and they try to get as much employees to come in to kind of go help the community as well. So, for example, there were times where they went to go help at a homeless shelter. There was times where they went to go help out at an animal shelter. So every month they try to do some type of wellness or community engagement with the staff.
How do you see, I don't know, that ethos kind of trickle down into your day to day role as you try to inspire team culture there?
How do I see that every day?
Yeah, how does that sort of ethos that comes from CHG at the top
Mhm.
of community involvement, philanthropic efforts, helping people who need help? How do you, I don't know, see that sort of trickle down into your work and kind of how the other employees show up?
Yeah, I mean, I try to every time I go into work, I go in knowing that it's not about me. It's about my staff and it's about the guest experience. And so I try to go into work every day, kind of inspiring that. As like, I'm not going to go in thinking like this is all about me. I got to go in thinking about I got to think about what the staff needs, and I got to think about what the guest needs because we're in the business of hospitality. So essentially, by us providing food to people, we're giving a service. So I feel like every day, we're doing that. And so as long as I inspire others, it's like, hey, we're doing something for the community. We're giving people a good time. This is when people go out to eat. It's an opportunity for them to just forget life. You know, at work. They just want to come in and enjoy themselves. And so I try to inspire that. As like, let's just put it aside. Let's think about the guests. Let's think about the staff. Let's see what the biggest need is.
Yeah. William, growth often comes from our biggest challenge. What's a serious challenge that you had to overcome, either in business or your personal life? I'd be interested in hearing some of the
Mm,
practical steps that helped you overcome that challenge and then what you
yeah.
learned from that experience.
So biggest challenge for me is I have a lot of anxiety, a lot of self doubt in me. I am a very doubtful person. There have been times where I thought I'm not good enough. I'm not doing well. I'm just terrible at my job. And and I'm be completely honest with you right now, there are times where I still think that. To this day, I still think that. Um, I still suffer from anxiety. I struggle with it every day. Um, but then something I have to tell myself is that you have to, even though I live with this anxiety, you have to overcome it. So in a way, I'm having a conversation with my inner self. He's like, how can I overcome this? Um, so a couple of things I've been working on is, just taking time to myself it's always important to have that work-life balance. Um, and then really just talking it out with people. Um, I've been work. I have my family that I can rely upon. I have my friends that I can speak to. I'm currently working with like a leadership coach that's really helping me kind of develop myself as both a person and as a leader. So really kind of taking time to myself to kind of get this self doubt out of, not saying out of my body, but to live with it, but not let it overcome me.
I'm so glad that you brought this up, William. Thank you for that, because it's
Hmm.
it's the kind of thing that so many people are dealing with, kind of behind the curtain, right, behind the scenes, that
Yeah,
we don't talk about because we're afraid of how we'll be viewed. We don't want to be seen as weak, and in reality, you're not weak. There's nothing wrong with you. It's
right.
natural human traits, and so the more that we talk about this kind of stuff, give voice to it, I think it empowers other people to sort of confront the same kinds of things that they're dealing with. The anxiety that goes on. You didn't use this term, but you basically you talk about imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
and I hear a lot of high performers that deal with that on a regular basis. And there's this negative chatter in their heads that says, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this right. I'm an idiot. I'm going to fail. Whatever that sort of sounds like, it's really talking down, and it's really weighing down heavily on you. And I think you sort of talked about this inner dialogue that you're dealing with, right? You've
yeah,
got this negative voice, and you can't get rid of it, right? It's not going away. So how do you sort of quiet the voice, right? And how do you tell sort of the other voice in your head that just because you're hearing these negative thoughts doesn't mean that they're true, right?
yeah.
Is that kind of part of the process? Is that sort of part of the way that you think about this?
It is, yeah, because you mentioned saying how do you quiet that voice, and for me, there's no way to quiet that voice. That voice is always taking space in my mind. Um, but the other voices in my head need to be like, shut up, like you got this. So there's just no way to quiet that voice. It's more so how do I overcome that? Um, and I there's don't know what the answer is because I'm still trying to figure that out because I'm still struggling with it. Um, like even in this interview right now, it's just like I'm experiencing a lot of self doubt. Like, am I conducting myself in a way I should be conducting myself right now? Am I saying the right things? Am I saying something wrong? I'm like, am I gonna leave this interview right now and be, oh crap, I should have said this, or oh crap, I shouldn't have said this. You know, it's like, did I not convey what I want to convey properly? So, but then I got to think to myself, you can't take it too seriously. You just got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's what the other voices are telling me. You got to be you. Be your true self. Everyone makes mistakes. No one's perfect. Um, it's you just learn from it.
Well, first of all, if I can help to quiet that voice in this moment, I would tell you that you're doing a fantastic job. We've really touched on a lot of great topics here. So if that voice can hear me, please be quiet.
Yeah,
William's
yeah,
doing great. But I could maybe offer a couple of suggestions, just from my own experiences as well as the countless people that I've had a chance to talk with. I had a guest not too long ago who actually credited this idea of imposter syndrome with
mm,
being his superpower. He had sort of figured out a way to kind of flip his relationship with that negative voice. And rather than trying to make it, tamp it down, make it be quiet, or you're fighting with it or you're wrestling with it, it's more like, this is part of what fuels me to get up out of bed every day and find a way to do things better. Without
right.
that voice, without some semblance of that voice there, maybe you just wake up every day and you're just perfectly content and happy and the world's perfect and you're not going to strive for more. It's theory. I don't know.
Yeah.
With that voice there, if you can kind of, sort of turn it around a little bit and be, a little bit grateful for, okay, thank you for that message. I'm going to process that. I'm going to take parts of that and see, how I can implement that in my day and find a better way to do my job and to show up better for my customers and my employees.
Yeah.
Is there any element of that that's rings true to you?
I mean, pretty much everything that you
Yeah.
just said kind of resonates with me. I feel like I've been going through a little bit of imposter syndrome kind of pretty recently, especially more so now that I am a general manager of a restaurant because as a general manager, you have a lot more responsibilities. You're the face of a restaurant. And so in a way, I feel like I have to be a different person at times. And I feel like there's times where I'm not being myself.
Mm.
And I kind of don't like that feeling because I do want to be myself because I'm in this role for a reason. This is this is what the company saw of me. They saw that I have it. You know, they believed in me. Now I just got to show them that. Now it's like the question is, did they believe, this imposter or did they believe me? Now I know they didn't believe the imposter. They believe in me because they know who I am as a person.
Right.
But then the self down in my head is just like, that's not true.
Yeah. And
That's
isn't
not who
that
you are.
interesting? Because you've got, several years worth of proof of history that
Right.
shows your skill and your competence, right? You came in to ground level, didn't know what you were doing, had no background in the restaurant industry, worked your way up to server, then dining room manager, then assistant manager, and then general manager of your own
Yeah,
restaurant. Like those things didn't happen accidentally, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that again, that's what it is right there. Is like you have people who believe in you. You have people who see it, get the self doubt out of your mind. Just be yourself. And ever since I've become a general manager, I have to start thinking about, I got to be myself. I got to be true to who I am. I got to fulfill the mission of what the company wants for the restaurant. I got to fulfill the mission of what the restaurant is. I got to fulfill the mission of what the staff need. I got to think about the staff. I got to think about the guests. I can't think about myself truly. I got to think about, everything as a whole.
Mm. Shifting gears, William, if you were to recommend one resource, a book, a course, a podcast, something
Mhm.
along those lines to help someone grow as a person or
Yeah.
grow in their career path, what would that be?
So there was this book that I read. It's called From Good to Great. I can't remember who the author is right now. But so the CHG, they had this kind of leadership kind of seminar with managers where we all kind of got together and we kind of discussed leadership. And so there was a book that we had to read, and it was From Good to Great. And I really enjoyed reading that because it gives you a lot of stories about different industries, not just about hospitality, but like other industries who are developing people as leaders and kind of the steps they took. So that the main kind of framework is how do we come from someone who is like a good leader to a great leader. Um, it's been a couple of years since I've read it, but when I was reading it, it really was a great resource for me, especially coming from someone who has no experience in hospitality, who was a leader in a very different field. I was a leader in education, and now being a leader in hospitality, and seeing what now the two industries are similar to, but also very different. And that book kind of put everything together.
Yeah, the author, Jim Collins, is the author's name.
Yes, I can
And
remember.
I'll
Yeah.
second recommendation for this book. It's been a while since I've read it, but it's a great read and super valuable for folks. Um, I think I've just got. Oh, actually, no. But before I do that, let's do something kind of fun, interesting. Maybe a different fact, a fun, interesting fact that people don't know about you, William.
Oh God. Um, um, so I mean, I am very known. I mean, I guess it's not known to like people who kind of work with me and everything, but I am very much into pop culture. It's kind of like I'm not saying I'm an obsession, but I can consider myself kind of like a pop culture kind of nerd in a way. Um, I'm always up to date with kind of like what's happening in pop culture, with movies, TV shows, and all that stuff. Like every time I go to trivia with my friends, we do it every Tuesday. Anytime there's like a pop culture round, I pretty much know everything. Um, and they always kind of make fun of you for that because it's just useless information that you would think no one knows. And I was like, oh well, this happened in the news, or this happened. Um, and so they always kind of joke with me about my pop culture kind of knowledge. Like they'd say I need to go on like pop culture Jeopardy, and then I would dominate it. And I'm like, okay,
If that
maybe
were a
I
thing,
know that
sign me up, right?
it actually is a thing.
Oh, it is.
There's a now, yeah, there's a spin-off of Jeopardy. It is on, it's pop culture Jeopardy. So they haven't seen it, so I'm thinking, like, maybe I should sign up for the next season. So maybe
Do it.
you'll see me
Well,
on
and we'll
pop
have you
culture
back on
Jeopardy. On
after your
whatever,
experience.
exactly. Maybe you'll see me on pop culture Jeopardy at some point in the future if it continues. So
Well, and one of the reasons I'm laughing is because, William, I am at the exact opposite end of that spectrum. My
yeah,
wife rolls her eyes at how little I seem to know about musicians, celebrity. That's what you mean when you talk
yeah,
about pop culture, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 Like we'll see somebody in a movie, and I'll be like, "Who is that? They're really good." And she's like, "Really? You don't know who that is?" Like they've
Yeah.
won an Oscar. Like they're everywhere. I'm
Right.
like, nah, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I have
So
been called the human IMDb. So
okay,
I don't know if you know what IMDb is.
yeah, the movie database, right?
Yeah,
Where you can.
yeah. I've been called the human IMDb.
Ah,
So
all right, that's fun. One more question for you, William. But before I ask, I want to do two things. For everybody listening, please hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. You love today's content. William's been a great guest. You want to get more content like this, please hit that follow button. That ensures that you will be up to date on what's coming. William, I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you or continue to follow your story. What would that be?
yeah. So I am on LinkedIn. If people want to follow me on LinkedIn, just type in my name. My profile should show up. I am on Instagram. Even though I barely use it. But to really kind of stay up to date on kind of like my professional kind of journey would definitely be through LinkedIn.
Great. And we'll include that link in the show notes for folks.
Yeah.
So, last question for you, William. As you look forward, what emerging trends, technologies, new guest experiences, changes in general coming to the hospitality industry excite you the
Mhm.
most?
I feel like there's always new trends happening in hospitality. One of the newest trends that I've noticed um, recently is QR codes. Now that people can use to like pay for their bill, so we do have that trend, um, and I do think I like that because it's an opportunity for the guests to kind of just pay through their phone because no one carries wallets anymore or carries their IDs. Everything's through their phone. Um, and so it really is an opportunity for the guests to just do everything digitally. And also it is an opportunity for um, kind of what we call in the restaurant industry like turning tables. So there's a higher rate of people leaving to get the next table to sit down if people use QR codes. So that's definitely kind of a new practice that is definitely interesting. Um, but there's also new like systems coming out for hospitality, like new POS systems that I'm very excited about learning about. There's always something new, and I really want to see how technology and hospitality um, kind of coincide with each other.
Going back to that faster turnover of tables, that's a big deal in the restaurant industry.
It is, yeah.
Being able to turn that faster. Do you have any data that maybe specifies like how much faster the tables turn over, like 4 minutes or something? Do you have any data to back that up?
I don't have it on me, but I remember when I was, because there's a company that I came in that was kind of teaching us about it. They said that if people use the QR codes, there's higher chance for them to get up the table quicker because they don't have to wait for
They
the
can do it
server
as
to
soon as
like
they're
come
ready.
grab the card.
You're not looking for the
Exactly,
server. Yeah.
exactly. So that could take like 1 to 2 minutes, because sometimes if they're waiting for the server, it could be like a little bit longer, especially on busy nights. But if they have the QR code, it could take about 10 seconds and boom, they're gone. And then you have the next table in that seat within a minute.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you yourself, or if you've heard of CHG, sort of higher level management, employing AI in any way in the company yet.
No, and I don't think that's going to happen. I
Okay.
mean, I don't know how AI works in hospitality, to be 100% honest with you, because I feel like when you use AI, it kind of takes the hospitality out of it. Because I feel like for hospitality, the whole purpose is that you're seeing an actual person.
Hmm.
Um, you want that human interaction. Um, so I don't think AI is going to be coming into CHG or
I've heard some
anytime
businesses
soon.
using it kind of on the back end to evaluate customer data, marketing data, maybe to come up with some of the, help to enhance some of the marketing schemes,
Mm,
practices that they're using. Those are some of the ways that I've heard folks talk about it. But I think you're absolutely right, especially in a nice sit down environment like you guys have with CHG restaurants. Uh, we're not going in there to be served by robots, right? We want that human
yeah,
interaction. We want that experience. That's
right.
why we've been coming back out of our homes and coming back into the restaurants. We like that.
Well, even so, it's just like with kind of like AI. Well, outside like the whole robots, that I kind of wasn't thinking about that, but I was more so thinking like you have like your kiosk where you go up to a thing and then you place your
Hmm.
orders and everything. Um, I don't think that's going to be a model that's going to be happening anytime soon.
All right. Great. Well, William, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a great opportunity, and I really do appreciate you taking your time to kind of learn about me, learn about CHE and Double Zero, and everything we talked about.
It's been my pleasure. Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.